Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning to those on the West Coast. And we want to wish everyone a meaningful Pesach. Unfortunately, we've had some very, very difficult days over the last few days, the beginning of Pesach, much of this orchestrated by Hamas. And you'll have a chance to hear the details, what's happening, where this is going. We want to thank and express our incredible gratitude to, first of all, Major General Nadav Padan, who's with us, who we're going to be asking a number of questions to, and specifically someone who has not been sleeping. It's been working day and night, and that's Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht. Lieutenant Colonel Hecht was originally the family's from Glasgow, who had a very significant career in the IDF, was in private industry, and was brought back specifically because of his ability to articulate his knowledge. And he's been addressing, whether it's the BBC, CNN, Fox, as well as other networks across the world. And we thank the Lieutenant Colonel for joining us to give us a briefing. We'll hear a very challenging, complex situation. We've got rockets coming from Lebanon, from Gaza, from Syria, and we've got a very serious potential for an incredible war. You're dealing with the Hezbollah, you're dealing with their role, even though Hamas has been sending the rockets, what role they play. And not to mention something that Lieutenant Colonel Hecht is going to share with us. 27 battalions have been moved in terms of dealing with this issue. Hamas causing trouble in Judea and Samaria, in the cities, the mixed cities in Jerusalem, not to mention the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of tourists who are there for Pesach and Easter. And Hamas is using social media as a vehicle of terror, trying to galvanize the whole Islamic world, both Sunni and Shia. What's happening, what's coming out of Jordan, what's coming out of Iran, the fact that Hezbollah and Hamas are sitting right now in Beirut meeting, all of this is an extremely dangerous, extremely complex situation. And with this, first we're going to hand it over to the Lieutenant Colonel, Richard Hecht, who's going to be addressing us from Israel. Thank you.
Good morning and good evening, everyone. Really honored to be on. Been a challenging few days. I'd like to also give you sort of a quick update and give as much time as possible, maybe to some questions and comments, but to give you a taste of where we are. And I think before I jump into the last 3 days, there's some context needed. And basically, I go all the way back to 21, where there was basically a very big operation called Guardian of the Walls, where basically Hamas managed to make a connection with Judea and Samaria, and there was unrest in Jerusalem, rockets from Gaza. This is something to take into mind. Since then, there's been a lot of unrest in Judea and Samaria, mainly in the north part, Nablus and Jenin, where we see that the Palestinian Authority's grip. The Oslo structure is not as strong as it was, and very, very much challenged. A lot of weapons, new organizations and ideas, disaffiliated, Lion's Den, very, very volatile. And we've been pinpointing these terrorist organizations, and they've been shooting. And again, as a battalion commander, and also the general is here, he's longer than me, but going into these towns, there were stones and Molotov cocktails. Now it's guns. So it became very, very volatile. And again, this is not an intifada. This is very important to mention this. Everybody was asking us, has the genie come out of the bottle yet? The answer is no. The crossings at this time, all through this year and a half, were open, and we were pinpointing these threats, mainly coming out of the north, of Judea and Samaria. Again, treacherous attacks coming into Israel, the Dizengoff, the Bnei Brak, the Hadera, the shootings. So that's in the sort of background, but focusing into this, to where we are or where we've been in the last few days, it seemed like the perfect storm. And again, the IDF was preparing for this. It was that sort of a convergence of dates. You know, I don't know if we have any evangelists here, but we had Pastor Hagee saying, I met him a few weeks ago, and he was saying, Richard, it's happening. And all these dates aligning. So you're seeing Passover, Ramadan, and Easter all at the same time. And that created a certain, maybe conditions for a perfect storm. So we were building up for this. And then basically the current last events kicked off 2 nights ago in Jerusalem, where, and again, this is something very important, and there's been a lot of false narratives running about. The narrative was, and again, this was, again, why did it become problematic? Because during Passover, there's the status quo on the mountain where in certain days, tourists and Jews can come onto the mountain. Those are the window between 7 and 11, where again, during there's the prayers, and again, the first 2 weeks of Ramadan before Passover were very quiet. During Passover, there's that window where Jews and tourists can come onto the mountain, and there was a lot of incitement on social networks on behalf of Hamas, saying the Jews are going to come and storm Temple Mount and slaughter goats and all sorts of false and fake ideas. And then we heard this word, so barricading themselves in the mosque. There were Islamists, Hamasniks, rioters, vigilantes, you name it, barricading themselves in the mosque. So I was also asked by our reporters, if they're barricading and the people that are coming to pray in the morning will pray, just let it die a natural death. They weren't barricading. They were preparing to storm that 4-hour window, basically closing themselves off. The Waqf was closing their eye. The Waqf is the custodian under the Jordanian apparatus. And they were bringing in munitions and fireworks and stones and preparing to storm the open area there where Jews come onto the mountain. So the police wanted to finish it at night. And there were very problematic visuals. Of course, it was edited. We didn't do a good enough job of showing our side from the police. And these visuals basically kicked off a massive energy in the Arab world, which basically created a convergence of arenas. It kicked off that dynamic that I talked about, where Sinwar says, I want to keep Gaza more or less under the threshold of war, but I want to bring Judea and Samaria in. And he started firing rockets from Gaza. And then after that, at the same night, we had these rockets coming from Lebanon. So we found ourselves in a multi-dimensional conflict, which is a challenge for the Iron Dome, for the soldiers. And again, the IDF, I've talked about that 1.5 years, were really, really stretched. The IDF and also the police and the security apparatus. And again, our focus was, when this thing kicked off, we were looking at this conflict and saying, okay, what do we do here? First of all, we defend Israel. We send messages, and we also use our kinetics. We strike Gaza, infrastructure of Hamas, say that they're responsible. We focus on the launching areas in Lebanon. Again, there was a certain threshold we wanted to keep. We didn't want to kick it off to a bigger scale conflict. Again, because we were thinking about the upcoming weekend of Ramadan, Easter, and Passover. And again, one of the fantastic things of having Iron Dome with a lot of US help is that it gives us the composure to decide when we will react. Not from our guts, from our brain. And I'm very proud of, I've been exposed to our new Chief of Staff, General Halevi, his composure, his stoicism, and running this chess game. I think he's done it immaculately. And again, with a lot of pressure, not only externally, but also internally. I mean, there's a lot of unrest right now in Israel, which I'm sure you're all looking at. That's maybe more for General Padan to talk about. I'm on uniform, and we're trying to keep the IDF out of the politics, which is also a challenge. We're here to defend Israel. So basically, we reacted. And that basically, I think more or less, it's more or less now gone quiet. Also in Lebanon, also in Gaza. I think nobody wanted to escalate. We had last night some shots also from probably Shia militias in Syria. We also sent a message to the Syrian regime. We attacked one of their headquarters, the 4th Division established infrastructure, which are close to the Assad regime, to Maya al-Assad. And there's been a lot of, it's language, which you all probably understand. And again, we have a few very, very sensitive days coming up. Again, that status quo I talked about in the mountains, where people are still coming in, is still something we're very, very concerned about. Where there will be unrest. I mean, every night is a test from itself. So last night, the police changed their tactic and basically let the guys barricade inside the museum, blocked inside the mosque. Sorry, they blocked it off, and this morning it was seamless. So we had in that respect it was a good day. Bezrat Hashem, we'll have the next few days also will go by quietly, but we're ready for any scenario. The IDF is stretched very much. Again, Steve mentioned that Judea and Samaria is still very, very volatile. We had these attacks also in the Jordan Valley, also from Kfar Qasim into Tel Aviv. I mean, it's very, very, very stressful right now. The soldiers are stretched out. I mean, I'm sure the issue of Hawara will come up, but rightfully so. There could be other Hawaras because Hawara just got a lot of attention. But right now, because we understand that area is so contentious, there's a full battalion deployed there on the road. And again, it's getting warmer and hotter, and these soldiers are under a lot of stress. It's a very, very, whoever's driven through there, it's a very, very tense road. So challenging times, but we will prevail. We will prevail. Where it's going, hard to say. We'll wait till the upcoming days. I mean, we want to get through these this sacred time, this worshiping time, in a good way. And once we get to the end of it, we'll decide how we react. I mean, the IDF still has an open notebook on who came after our civilians. There's a lot of people have been killed, and we won't rest till we get to anyone who came after our civilians.
If I could ask a question, both of Major General Padan and Lieutenant Colonel Kemp, when this initially happened with multiple rockets coming out of Lebanon, and it's clear that Hamas could not have done this without the green light or the allowance either from Hezbollah or Hezbollah and Iran, and then as well what they're doing in Syria, on top of the fact that rockets are coming from Gaza. So here Israel is being attacked on three sides. And if this were to exacerbate, where it's not just against Hamas, but it's against Hezbollah, it's against other Shia militias, that becomes a major war. The sensitivity there of trying to prevent that from happening, and at the same time, taking care of the citizens who literally are in a very precarious situation. If you're dealing with thousands and thousands of rockets, PGMs and others coming from Lebanon, there was a very tense time when that could have been a full-blown war. How do you see that? How did that, until now, that has not happened? And in terms of preventing that from happening over the next coming days, if each of you could share your thoughts.
General, do you want to speak, or shall I go first? You outrank me, sir.
Yeah, go first, and I'll
okay,
wrap it up.
So as I said, there's a language here. I mean, the American, we learn a lot from Americans' power projection and language of what's under the threshold or not. Israel has, and again, we're dealing with the Iranian threat on a daily, weekly basis. I mean, they're acting all over the region, also in Syria, also in Lebanon, also in Gaza. And there's a threshold that we are keeping and focusing on. And you're seeing these things happen in the Middle East. Now, in this case, I mentioned General Halevi was playing chess, and we decided at a certain level what we were focused on. We decided at some point that the context of our response was Palestinian. And again, that's a concern of itself, seeing Hamas having that sort of magnitude of acting in a sort of in a multiple region with the Palestinian capabilities. And again, you're seeing the pictures today from Beirut. I don't know exactly what happened there, but we kept it in a context. And again, we will respond in a timely manner when we see fit. The Iranian threat is a predominant threat, but going into now all out now, I think would have probably been the wrong move and not what we were focusing on.
So I totally agree with what you say. I mean, strategically speaking, we have to understand that the head of the snake is Iran. Iran doesn't give order to Hamas, but it pays to Hamas and support Hamas, and in a way, it creates kind of obligation, and it can push Hamas to be more active, or push Hezbollah along the border with Israel to be more active. When it comes to Israel strategic decision making, it's depend on our goal. Sometimes it's support our goal to blame Hezbollah for everything that happened in Lebanon, because it's the strongest force in Lebanon, and it can launch or force other small organizations to do what it say. We can blame Hamas for everything that happened in Gaza Strip, and in the last operation we can launch surgical point operation against the Islamic Jihad without blaming Hamas. It depends on the way the IDF organize and design is strategic and operation. Right now, it doesn't make sense to grab Iran and Hezbollah into the ongoing friction that we're facing. We're dealing with multiple dimension and fronts. We're dealing with 6 fronts today. With the cyber, I don't know if you heard about the attack against the National Post Office in Israel, against Gaza, Judea and Samaria, Arab Israeli, Lebanon, Syria. We don't have to add another front or dimension to this operation. We had to contain it and to build our way to deal with the head of the snake and all the chain of all the structure of this creation of evil at the time that's more convenient to us. I mean, convenient to the IDF, I would say.
Steve, can I make one comment? I'm seeing some of the chats here, and just piggybacking off what the general said. And I think it's important. It's an important sort of general remark, because I see some issues here about the IDF, the traitors, blah blah blah. The IDF is the solution. If there's a common denominator in Israel, as again, we're still a mobilized nation, and there's a lot of people trying to put IDF into the sort of political storm. Also, people saying we won't come to do our reserves. We are totally against it. Today, I spoke to a battalion commander who spoke to Bloomberg from the Iron Dome. And again, when it hits the fan, people will come, and again, we will overcome this. We will overcome this unrest. Also, it's an internal unrest. I want to stay on the topic of what's going on, but I'm sure everybody's concerned about everything that's going on right now in Israel. I'm seeing all the remarks here in the chat.
Yeah,
I come out of these 2 days reinforced and a bit more optimistic about the IDF. It's been traumatic. It's been dramatic a few months. We're in a good place. I would be less concerned.
I'm not offering myself to be advisor for the Hamas, but he made a very big mistake creating this operation, this specific timing. I mean, it just show that once Israel under threat, everybody, all the communities of Israel, regardless their political opinion, regardless if they're religious or secular or whatever, they all become one. So you see how Israel, and specifically the IDF, is united over the last few days when we have to operate. All the pilot, there is no pilot, no battalion commander, no combat soldier that say no for what we call Tzav Shmona, for a call to be served in the IDF. So from that perspective, the Hamas made a tremendous mistake.
Strategic mistake.
Yeah.
Amen, sir. Amen. And yeah.
Before the next question, and I want to share with everyone that's listening and that will be listening when we put this up on the web for everyone to see, it's very important to understand. You're looking at thousands and thousands of reservists that have been called up in the last day and a half. You're looking at a movement of battalions we're talking thousands and thousands of soldiers. They're not on their base. They're not with their kitchens. They're not with their facilities. And the financial cost of this is huge. What we're being asked to support on the humanitarian level, we do not support military aid, we support humanitarian aid, is massive. And what I ask of everyone, and to share with others as well, to go to fidf.org, fidf.org/donate. And we have an emergency campaign to facilitate. We've been on the phone all day with the IDF, taking requests for multiple needs. And because of the extent of the call up, both of reservists as well as soldiers being taken off of their bases, being placed in border towns, being placed throughout Judea and Samaria, the costs are absolutely overwhelming. And if you could help us, we'd be very, very grateful on behalf of the soldiers, the welfare of the soldiers. Going back to the next question, you had mentioned, Lieutenant Colonel, the sinister use of social media, of how Hamas is portraying that we're taking over the Temple Mount, that we're taking over and what we're doing to Muslims on the Temple Mount, and that this is a call for a unification of all of Islam. You heard this echoed by Erdogan out of Turkey. He said this yesterday. You're hearing Jordan make comments. You're hearing this coming out of Iran, out of Lebanon, etc. This creates, again, a very precarious, very dangerous situation. If both General Padan and Lieutenant Colonel Hecht, if you care to speak about that, how they're trying to mobilize Israeli Arabs, Sunni Arabs, Shia Arabs using social media, specifically during Ramadan, specifically in their heinous, vicious way, playing that very, very raw nerve of what we call Har Habayit, the Temple Mount, what they call Harim al-Sharif.
Okay, so part of my portfolio is also running the social networks of the IDF. And again, I invite you all, and that's that when we talk about help fighting this battle of narratives, anyone that retweets or amplifies our message always helps. Now, the answer is pretty simple, Steve. We understood this. I mean, I can talk about Palestinian incitement, for eternity, and I think everybody knows it well. What was our strategy? And we combined forces with the police. We put drones. We deployed drones over Temple Mount and basically just showed in a very, very sort of professional way, without using the blame game and rhetorics, and we just showed the flow of people. I don't know if you saw our Twitter accounts with the police, our Twitter account. We had drones overlooking the mountain, and you just saw, even after these night events where they were unpleasant, when the big influx of people coming into the mountain in the morning were coming in, it showed quiet. It showed that the passings into Israel were seamless, and we were just putting that message out there without going down to the level of saying, etc., etc. And we were always fighting that fake news coming out. There were fake news of goats being slaughtered on Temple Mount. That didn't happen. And again, it's a matter of quality, quantity, and aesthetics of how you're doing your social networks. I think we came, again, I don't know, it's not over yet, but again, look at the police Twitter account and our Twitter account. You'll see God's view of Temple Mount, and you'll see that it's quiet. That's the best victory.
So, I mean, taking one step backward and look at it from bird's eye view, I mean, for years there is a war inside the Muslim world. Who is controlling the Holy Mountain? Is it the Muslim Brotherhood? Is it Jordan, up to the agreement that we have with them? The Waqf are actually Palestinian that get a salary from Jordan, and they are the one that synchronize and control the religious part of the Holy Mountain. By the way, the security is under the responsibility of Israel. So from that perspective, each side of the Muslim world trying to take advantage of every instability to move forward with their strategic goals. Looking from Hamas perspective, Hamas using the holidays of Ramadan every year. So there is another war that the Muslim Brotherhood, led by Hamas, trying to make the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians as a religious war. And the moderate country, by the way, conclude the Palestinian Authority are trying to keep it a national war about our own borders. Using the story of the Holy Mountain and specifically during the time of Ramadan, it's kind of initiator, a tool for Hamas to burn a fire, to unstabilize the Muslim world and to recruit the people all over the Muslim world. What we're seeing so far, and Colonel Richard already mentioned it, that so far they are failing to mobilize the public. We can see the young group and young cells of terror all over Israel and along the border. We mention it, but we don't see the streets and the communities get out to the street like we saw in 21st and in 2021 and before. And we'll see Erdogan and other Muslim leaders saying what they have to say for their own strategic goal at the Holy Mountain. It's not necessarily describe their belief of what's going on there.
Thank you very much for those thoughtful answers. And the last question that we'd like to discuss, as you see the situation today, I believe there's almost 2 weeks of Ramadan still left. Where do you see this going? And I understand none of us are prophets, but where do you see this going? Because 2.5 days ago, we were scared. We were scared that this could be a full-blown war. You know, we've never seen rockets like this coming out of Lebanon to this degree since 2006. Today, we saw that there were over 840 Jews going on the Temple Mount. They acted quietly. They acted appropriately according to the accords. There were no rockets. There were no Molotov cocktails. Things were quiet. It's a very different situation today than it was 2.5 days ago. But there still are 2 weeks of Ramadan left. Where do each of you see this going?
I wish I had some optimistic or an American story to say that it's going to have a happy ending. I've heard our chief of staff and our minister. Nobody knows. We're ready for this to go in any direction. I mean, there's so many points where it could kick off in Syria, it could kick off in Lebanon again. There's so many touch points where this could go bad. It's hard to say. The flashpoint that we're very focused on is till the end of Chol HaMoed, till the end of Passover, when we have that opening to come on to Temple Mount. Once Ramadan is over, there's another contentious, which is a problematic day, is Jerusalem Day. But we're prepared for all these events. And again, it's very hard to say, Steve. I think it would be arrogant even to say where this is going.
I would say that we're in the middle of wave of terror. It doesn't end. I mean, generally speaking, the last Friday of the Ramadan is always the toughest period of time of the Ramadan. It's, the day before the Eid al-Fitr, before the holiday that closed the Ramadan, considered to be the most holiday, important days of the holiday. And to commit suicide during those days, it's considered to be a holy thing to do. It's in Arabic they call the guy that commits suicide in those days shahid, holy men. And I guess that the IDF and the police in Israel and the Shabak and all the organization will have to deal with wave and wave of terror attempt during the next few days if we'll act, and the situation generally are very fragile. So it's kind of very smart surgical way of management thing to do to control the level of terror, to destroy those cells of terror before they are able to launch the temptation and attack toward Israel from one end, and from the other end, to not to change the rule of the game and to grab Hezbollah or Iran or other into the conflict that we're facing the last few days. So if I have to wrap it up, we'll still have a lot of challenge the next few weeks specifically, and even afterward.
On behalf of all of us, Jews and Christians throughout the length and breadth, I always say throughout the length and breadth of America, but on this Zoom, we have people calling in from Australia, South America, from Europe, and those of us who are concerned, for this precious, precious diamond that we call the State of Israel, for this precious diamond that is supported and protected and defended by the men and women of the IDF. We can't thank you enough. These young men and women are not spending, like many of us, Easter Sunday with their families, Pesach Seder, Pesach holiday with our families. That's not what they're doing. They're on hilltops, they're in borders, they're trying to prevent, suicide terrorists from killing innocent men, women, and children. They're not sleeping, and we're profoundly grateful to them. They're sacrificing their youth, the best years of their life. They're sacrificing their family time, their holiday, so that we can sit with our families. And we're profoundly grateful to them. And again, for those on the Zoom, we are in need of desperate funds. This is an incredible mobilization that's involving thousands and thousands of people. FIDF.org/donate. FIDF, Friends of the IDF, FIDF.org/donate. Lieutenant Colonel Hecht, you have been not sleeping because you've been working with the various news agencies, print agencies, TV agencies, all types of networks, etc. Just to mention a few, Fox, CNN, the BBC, and many, many others. And the fact that you provided us this opportunity to share with us what's happening on the ground, and to Major General Padan, who has given 4 decades of his life to enabling innocent men, women, and children to function like they do in every other country, just to be able to breathe, to go to work. We can't thank the both of you for your time, your thoughtfulness, and for giving us an insight into what's happening in a very challenging time, in a very precarious time. And as the Lieutenant Colonel said, it's not often that Ramadan, Passover, and Easter literally fall all three together at the same time. This is a very, very challenging time, and we're dealing with a very ugly enemy. And thank you. Thank you on behalf of all of us, the Friends of the IDF, for your leadership and for you being moral beacons and ethical beacons to humanity.
Thank you, Steve. And because you're the rabbi and I'm the general, I would say, Adonai oz le'amo iten, Adonai yavarech amo b'shalom.
Amen. Thank you all.